The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome from the General Assembly in the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications. And a very warm welcome for Dave Albo from Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, who also chairs the Courts of Justice Committee in the House of Delegates. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Short session, very busy year. I know your committee is very busy as well. Talk to us about the lay of the land at this point.
This is a short session. We do all the same work that we do in 8 weeks and 6 weeks. That's why I have bags under my eyes already. So, but we've started chugging away on day one, and we'll get it done. We always do.
And even though there's a limitation in the short session on the number of bills that have been introduced, I think they're close to 2,000 that have been introduced already. A lot of those will be done away with fairly quickly, but I know your committee is busy with a lot of legislation.
Right. Well, my committee is called the Courts of Justice Committee. People might recognize it as Judiciary Committee in D.C. And we handle probably about a third of all the bills come through there. It deals with everything that lawyers would deal with. So anything in court, anything with crime, anything that deals with divorce law. So it has a very wide kind of jurisdiction, and that's why it's very busy.
But of course, one of your major interests is transportation. It's a huge issue in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, statewide, but particularly this year, the governor has an initiative that would really change the landscape by doing away with the gas tax. Talk to us about your proposal, the similarities and differences between it and the governor's package.
Right. Well, listen, the governor, and I've known him for 16 years here, he's just such a great guy, and he made a promise during his election that he was going to try to solve transportation, and he did it. He posted up a plan, and a lot of people didn't think he was going to do it. He's a man of his word. So his plan, to really distill it down, is he raises the sales tax, and then he lowers the gas tax. In fact, he eliminates the gas tax, so that the average Virginia person would pay no more new taxes in the aggregate. And so it's great. It raises $700 million. I think he also has some fees like increasing a registration fee in a car and some other things. So the reason it works is he raises $700 million with the sales tax increase, and he reduces the gas tax to zero. And so that's why in the aggregate that it works. Some of us don't like the eliminating the gas tax part. And the reason is because it takes the user fee aspect out of driving.
User fee meaning those who use the roads pay for.
Right. And now, so for example, if you're older and you don't drive as much as I do, you'd be paying more because you'd be paying a sales tax but not the gas tax. The other thing too is that it's hard to say for sure whether the gas price is actually going to go down 17.5 cents.
I see.
See, you have to rely on the oil companies, the distributors to pass it on. If I have my University of Virginia economics hat on, which is where I went to school and I have a degree in it, I would say it should work, right? But you just don't know. And even if it does drop 17.5 cents, I don't quite know whether I'd know I got it or not because the thing fluctuates so much. So my plan is governor's plan, just a little bit different. What I do is instead of eliminating the gas tax is I eliminate the food tax.
The food tax, okay.
People pay 2.5% when they buy groceries at a grocery store, and so there's a number of us who like that approach better because that's a guaranteed tax cut. You'd know it because you'd go to the grocery store and you see, hey, I paid no taxes.
Tell me about the reaction you have received from your colleagues and constituents about your proposal versus the governor's, or is this just part of the ongoing debate in the General Assembly?
It's part of the mix. When Delegate May and Russ and I went to go visit the governor, we described it as this. He put the pizza out, right? So he put a medium pizza and he has pepperoni and sausage on it. I want to take the sausage off and put green peppers on. We're all just trying to solve the same problem. It's just different ingredients in how you get there. The other thing that our plan does that the governor's plan doesn't do is we authorize the local governments in an area to charge a half-cent sales tax for their own roads.
Okay.
Now, the tax cut on food is so great that even if a local government added their own half-cent, people would still pay no extra taxes because they save so much on groceries. So I just wanted to make sure when people see this, we're not like raising your taxes. The food tax savings is so great that you would still pay no more in the aggregate. But the reason that's good is because that money is raised in Northern Virginia and stays in Northern Virginia and goes to pay for roads in your neighborhood. One of the things us Northern Virginia people have a problem is we pay taxes and it goes to Richmond and then it goes someplace else and we never see it. And so the Dave Albo, Joe May, Tom Russ plan includes a local option.
And local governments don't have that authority unless it's given to them by the state.
That's correct. And so we would give them the authority, but there are some caveats to it. They have to use it for transportation. They can't take money they're spending out of transportation and eliminate that and put this in it.
I see.
You know, so it has to be above and beyond what they're already doing. And we include a kill switch, which basically says is if that money is ever used for anything else other than transportation in the area that it was raised, it's over.
So segregated in a lockbox, but terminated if used unwisely or inappropriately.
That's exactly right.
What kind of reaction have you received from the business community? I assume that they are ecstatic about transportation funding.
Well, the business community is very excited about finally solving the problem. There's a big, long list of people who like Bob McDonald's plan. Again, they're like making a pizza, too. They wish that it had other things in it or maybe didn't have some things in it. And there are some people who don't like my plan. One of the ways that I fund all this, because when you eliminate the food tax, you're taking a lot of money out of the general fund. And I don't want to cut schools and police and environment and everything else we do. So what I do is I make people and businesses who are not paying taxes pay. The biggest loop. People or businesses.
People, business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who are not currently paying taxes. Right now, out-of-state corporations that perform services in Virginia do not pay a tax on corporate income. And so we kind of fix that little loophole. It brings some money in to help fill the gap that's created when we eliminate the food tax.
Now, there's also another element of the governor's proposal that has drawn some criticism because it is contingent or dependent upon the Congress passing a law that will allow the taxation of Internet online sales. Is that something that the Commonwealth should rely upon?
Well, first of all, let's make it clear, he's not raising taxes because you're supposed to pay tax when you buy something on the Internet. People just don't do it. When you buy something on Craigslist, you're supposed to pay sales tax. People don't do it. So what this federal law does is enables a mechanism for all the states to collect the sales tax that's owed to them. See, when I buy something from a company, say in California, that company doesn't have to follow Virginia law. They have no obligation to collect the sales tax for Virginia, and they usually don't. So what this would do, if the federal law passes, it makes every business in the state, in the country, collect the taxes when they are ordering something online and delivering it to that state. So it's just basically creating a collection mechanism for a tax that already exists. The controversy is that the federal government can't even pass a budget. And so a lot of people are wondering, why would they pass this? It's very reasonable, but how can we expect to pass this? And that's one of the controversies over the governor's plan, is it relies on a funding source that may not be too reliable.
Right. And we all know that there are huge issues before the Congress, not the least of which is this sequestration debate that's going on. And of course, Virginia is highly susceptible to a lot of adverse consequences if that occurs. I know you have a lot of federal employees in your district and in Fairfax County, and of course, the Commonwealth is full of military installations. You may not be hearing immediately about those concerns, but I assume as we approach whatever date is imminent, you will start to hear more about that.
Oh, if sequestration happens, Northern Virginia has got big problems, and I can't even underline and bold big enough. In my law practice, which is my regular job, almost all my clients are either federal government employees, military employees, or defense contractors, or they work for someone who works for those people.
Really?
And so when you talk about sequestration, which is a massive cut in defense spending, anybody who's on a federal defense contract could lose their job. And that would have cascading consequences on our tax base. People who no longer can pay, state income tax. They're not buying things. They may lose their house, so the county doesn't have money to pay for schools. It could have really drastic and devastating consequences, and all of us are very worried about it.
Well, hopefully it'll get resolved sooner rather than
keep
later.
my fingers crossed.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Now, back to your Courts of Justice Committee. I know that there's a really kind of interesting and unique discussion going on, and that has to do with GPS tracking devices. Tell us what's going on in that arena.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. It's almost a science fiction. When I was at Rolling Valley Elementary School in Springfield in the 70s, if someone had talked about putting little things on people's cars or on their coats and being able to track them, or even a box like this that you can make phone calls and people would know where you are, you would say, that's impossible. But it's possible now. And so with these great advances in technology comes some concerns amongst people about privacy and the police ability to use these things. Do we really want the police to be able to stick a tracking device on your car if they're not suspecting that you're committing a crime? Do you want to give private citizens or even the police the ability to know where you are just because your phone is pinging a cell phone tower? So we're trying to struggle with that. The reason it's difficult is no one wants a private citizen who's not doing anything wrong to be tracked. But we also don't want to give up a technology that might enable us to catch Osama bin Laden #2 right before he blows up a school. So we're really struggling to spend hours and hours talking about these kind of things and how we require police to get a warrant before they put these things on so that they can tell a judge why there might be a crime being committed. And also, what are we going to allow private citizens to do? Because I would like to track my kid. Right? I want to know where he is, so we don't want to make that type of technology unavailable. It's like a Rubik's Cube. You turn one side and the other 5 sides get messed up. But it is kind of interesting.
It must be. In fact, in the non-criminal arena, of course, most new cars come with GPS devices installed now. And I assume that there is a lot of use of that information now in some civil litigation. For example, in divorce proceedings.
Oh yeah, right.
I'm sure that's starting to happen as well.
That's part of it too. Can a disgruntled spouse get the OnStar information about where that car was at all points in the day? Is that a state interest? Do we want people to be able to have that information or not? That's just one of the many issues.
So it sounds like it's a pretty complicated and ongoing discussion before you get to the point where you may have legislation to deal with.
Yeah, last year we implemented a series of laws based upon a Supreme Court decision that said that if you use it on a criminal, you have to get a warrant. First you have to show. So, but now all the private sector issues are coming up. People are talking about drone aircraft.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So you can have drones flying over. Well, if a drone's just like a helicopter without a person on it, no one really has a problem. But if the technology gets so big that there's flying drones all over the place and they're watching you mow your lawn, no one wants that. So we're struggling with that also.
The other fairly significant issue before your committee involves tort reform, T-O-R-T, dealing with negligence law and limitations. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, I mean, for people who aren't lawyers, what a tort is a personal injury damage. It's not a crime. It's when one person does something to another person and damages that person, they want to go to court.
Car accidents, for example.
Car accidents. Might be somebody complains that a business ripped them off. That's not necessarily a tort, but it falls in this big debate.
Medical malpractice?
Medical malpractice, another good example. So a lot of the businesses feel like all these suits are frivolous, and they want to be able to have an expedited way in which they can get rid of frivolous lawsuits. And that's called using depositions and summary judgment. And but not all cases are frivolous, and what happens also is that you might have a legitimate complaint against a company, and the company uses their big giant law firm to just pound you with paper and put you in motions until you're bankrupt before you can even get to the courthouse. And so we're trying to balance those interests. I mean, no one wants frivolous lawsuits, but if you cast the net too wide, then you end up denying people their ability to take redress through the courts. So there's a big issue about what they call summary judgment, getting rid of frivolous lawsuits. There's also talk about where you sue. So, for example, the business community is concerned if you get hit by a train in Fairfax, people will sue the train company in Norfolk because they think they get a better jury. And we're trying to find ways for us to decide where the lawsuit is going to be heard. And then there's a thing called non-suit, and the law allows an attorney to drop his suit right before it gets to a jury. Well, the defendant says, well, now I just paid all this money for my expert witnesses and everything to come in, and then you just drop the suit and refile. So now we're looking at least allowing the defendant to recover some of those costs. So that's kind of boring, I guess, for people who aren't lawyers. But it's a really big deal, and it's about one of the most contentious things I've seen down here. And this is my 20th year, and this has been really, really tough.
Of course, what isn't boring this session relates to the potential that the moratorium on uranium mining could be lifted. I'm sure you're hearing a lot about that as well. Right.
Surprisingly enough, a lot from my constituents.
Really?
On both sides, yeah. And because I'm in Fairfax, this is down in South Boston area of Virginia.
Right.
It's 200 miles away, but people are concerned about it. I've been reading a lot on both sides. The people who want it say it's safe. The people who don't want it say it's not safe. But what has kind of swung me is all the delegates from that area don't want it. And you know what? I'm not going to stuff something down their throat they don't like. And because it works my way too. I mean, I don't want one day them saying, let's put a prison in Springfield. Yes. So I'm going to kind of defer. So my final decision has been I'm going to defer to people who represent that area.
Back to the education arena, the governor has several initiatives relating to education. Some reforming, for example, the way teacher contracts are handled, teacher raises, and other things. Are you hearing much about that from your local school districts?
Not too much yet. I'm waiting for it because I know the teachers won't like it. I mean, what his basic plan is instead of the current system where I think it's after 3 years you get essentially tenure and it's near impossible to fire you. He wants to be able to say there's no more tenure, but there's continuing renewable contracts, and so the school system can keep at certain periods looking at the teacher's performance and then deciding to rehire the teacher. That's the way it works in every other business except for teaching. So that's what he's looking to do, and he also is proposing a teacher pay raise. The controversy, though, is that they are trying to get rid of what's called the cost to compete funding. In Northern Virginia, we get more money in this formula for the fact that it costs too much money to live in Northern Virginia.
Is that the composite local?
Yes, it's part of the composite index. You're exactly right.
Okay.
Included in this whole formulation is money that goes to high-cost localities. It costs 1/3 more to live in Northern Virginia than it does Richmond. So in other words, if you make $100,000 in Richmond, you'd have to make $133,000 in Northern Virginia to have the same level of living. And the governor, McDonnell, I love the guy, but I'm not very happy with that. And Tim Kaine tried to do it too. Because whenever you're looking for money, it seems this place just looks for Northern Virginia and tries to take some of their money, our money, I should say, and spend it on other people's stuff. And so this has been nuclear war. It was nuclear war when Kaine did it 4 years ago. It was nuclear war when our governor did it, 2 years ago and last year, and it's nuclear war now. And everybody in Northern Virginia, whether you're Republican or Democrat, is galvanized around that issue.
What about increasing the number of charter schools in the Commonwealth? I think there are 4 now. The governor really wants to increase that number.
Yeah, the charter schools are kind of schools that work outside the normal rules of schools. They're not hampered by a lot of the increased regulations. He's really into it. I really don't care, to tell you the truth, because we've got great schools. My kid's now in 1st grade. I'm so impressed with the Fairfax County school system. I just don't think that parents really are begging me to do charter schools in Fairfax. But apparently other places that don't have very good schools, people are really interested in it. And so I'm going to try to help them get what they want.
Now what about the continuing talk about changing the King's Dominion law, which precludes school districts without a waiver, and apparently there are a lot of those waivers from beginning school before Labor Day.
Yeah, I was always a proponent of the King's Dominion law, and I've become a convert to the other side after maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Once we started standardized testing, you know, the test date doesn't move. So when Labor Day happens, like in the middle, first week, late in September, you lose about a week of preparation for the test. And so once we started going down the testing thing, I said you can't have it both ways. And so I've kind of changed my position on that. I mean, I tell you that, and I tell people there, because it's not like we make up our mind and never change. Right. You know, Barry Goldwater used to say, I reserve the right to be smarter today than I was yesterday, and so that's one of the places that I have changed my position on it. We passed a law last year out of the House that eliminated the rule that you can't start before Labor Day, and it failed in the Senate. So there might be some effort to revisit that.
The other effort last year that failed but has come back once more relates to the ability of those children who are homeschooled to participate in athletics, the Tim Tebow initiative.
Oh, you had to ask me about that one. About to get by with that, talking about it. That's a really tough one.
It is. I mean, there are pros and cons on both sides, as we know.
I have voted against that, and I know that my homeschool friends aren't too happy about it. The problem is that when I was at West Springfield High School, it was near impossible to make the soccer team because there are so many good soccer players. I got cut. I know you find it hard to believe, right? Well, it's true. But you know, when you start adding a lot of the other kids coming in who don't go to the school full time, there are a lot of kids who are going to get pushed out of that team. And so this is why it's a really tough issue, because they've got a great point. Why can't they're paying taxes? Why can't they use the school? But you also got to think of the kids who don't get to play on the team because they got pushed out of the spot. And so, you know, this is a tough job sometimes. There's a red button, a green button, and you can't, like, walk away and pretend like thing doesn't.
It is. That's true. Now, what about the red and green button at the 3rd grade level? If kids can't read by then, I understand that's a predictor of a lot of different things. Their failure, but also the potential for them to enter the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I happened to be sitting in a committee meeting when they're talking about getting rid of one of the SOL tests, history or science, and replacing that with more time for reading. And the testimony was the science teachers and history teachers say, I can teach a kid science and history in high school if he can read.
If he can read.
So trying to lighten the load. Apparently 3rd grade is a really big, tough year for testing. There's just too much testing going on in 3rd grade, and so they're trying to lighten the load to be able to give people more time to read. Actually, the reason I was there was because I have a bill trying to take calculators out of elementary school math.
Great idea.
Well, you know, a friend of mine, I grew up with him, Tim Harity. He's a teacher. He teaches Algebra 1, gives a test, which is basically manipulating fractions, 1/2 times 1/3, 1/8 divided by 7/6, whatever, on his first day to see where his kids are on their basic understanding of mathematical concepts. The calculation, basically, 87% fail.
87%?
87%. He's in Henrico, which is not some kind of school system that is known to have troubles. And we found out that Thomas Jefferson High School in Northern Virginia, Science Technology, rated the best school in the entire country. 30% of the kids are now getting remedial math.
Really?
I'm convinced, and Tim's convinced, and a lot of people are convinced that they're not learning the basics because it's too easy to get the number on the machine. So what we're trying to do is to make sure the teachers don't teach basic computation skills with calculators, so they have it up here.
Sure. And
then they can start doing the more advanced math with the calculators. It's been difficult to figure out how to craft such a bill, but I'm still working on it. So this is 3rd week. I'm on version number 3.0.
Good luck. Is George Mason University in your
just down the street. A lot of my constituents go there, but it's about 5 miles away.
That's a great school. Wasn't there a recent groundbreaking construction going on there on Ox Road for both the east and the west campuses to connect?
Yeah, they've been growing. You know, when I graduated West Springfield High School in 1980, George Mason is basically a commuter school, and you know, you went there if you could. Now it is a premier destination, and the people who've developed that school into what it is today have done just a phenomenal job. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and
it's got the largest enrollment in the state, I believe now.
Yeah, and you know, not only that, they have world-renowned programs, especially in bioinformatics. A lot of people don't know that. It's a go-to place for bioinformatics, and in science and technology and computers. And it's, so it's a super school. And they've got some growth issues.
And of course, Northern Virginia Community College continues to play a critical role in educating students who can't afford a George Mason, and more importantly, those folks who've been laid off by the economy and need to develop new skills. So workforce development is really important.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is Northern Virginia Community College is the best community college in the entire country. And I would say that if you go in there, you're going to a school that's better than a premier school in a lot of other states. So we have a great program we started a number of years ago. What would happen in our four-year institutions, juniors and seniors would either fail out or drop out, and there was all this extra capacity there. So we created this program. You go to community college anywhere in Virginia, you enter a contract with the school, so say you want to go to James Madison, they say you take these courses, you get an A or B, we guarantee you're in.
Okay.
And that transfer program has become hugely popular, and it also drops the cost of a college education dramatically because the community college is so much less expensive.
That's known as what, the 2+2 program, I believe, and also there's the TAG program, the tuition assistance.
Yeah, for private school.
Right.
Yeah, I went to law school at University of Richmond, so I had to use it. So.
Another subject that the Commonwealth is debating is the question of whether to expand Medicaid coverage. As a result of the Affordable Care Act, which was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, the states were given more discretion, however, in terms of whether to expand Medicaid. And the Commonwealth is still looking at that issue. I know it's a very tough one because there's a receipt of a lot of federal funds, but not guaranteed.
Yeah, and if my Democrat friend was here, I'll tell you their side of the story because there's two sides of the story. The federal government wants to expand Medicaid from a very, very low threshold, like family of four making $12,000 a year, to bring it up to 133% of poverty level. And that would add 450,000 people to the Medicaid rolls. And the federal government has promised they're going to pay 100% in year number 1, 100% in year number 2, and they say they're going to pay 90% in year number 3, 4, and thereafter. So my Democrat friends say, why not take it? It's free money when you get to take care of all these people who are currently uninsured. And my side of the story is, if it were a perfect world, I would do that. The problem is, I don't trust them to continue to pay for it. I have been down, like I said, 20 years. I can't tell you how many times they've created a program, we participate, and they pull the rug out from under you. The federal government, in case anybody doesn't know, is totally broke. They're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar. And so an example is if someone came up to you and said, hey, could you buy that house? I promise I'll pay 100% this year, 100% next year, and 90% year after.
And we can't rely on that. They're asking you to wrap up.
Sure. I mean, it's telling you, I don't trust them. I don't see where they're going to get the money.
Thank you for being here, Delegate David
Albo.
Albo.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.